Number one, this should be easy. This is not a trick question. But when you flip a coin, what are the chances you will get heads? What do you guys think? In a ratio or a percentage? 1 to 2 is the ratio. Good, Angelina. And then 50-50 or 50% is your percentage. Good, Shayla. Good, Angelina. Yep. Number two, again, not a trick question. Just making sure everybody knows how many quarters are in a dollar. 4, yep. 4 quarters in a dollar. If I give you 2 quarters, how much money are you going to have? $0.50. Yep, good. That is going to be relevant later in our discussion. All right, third one, I have a poll for you guys. What do you think? If we're using the letter A, which letter combination is homozygous recessive? Which letter combination is heterozygous? Which letter combination is homozygous dominant? This should be review from last week. And again, it's going to be really important that you understand last week's work to be able to get through this week and understand this week's work. Number one is asking for a homozygous recessive genotype. So what do those A's look like if they're both recessive? Number two is the heterozygous. And then number three is the dominant. What do dominant A's look like? Maybe another 10 seconds or so. All right, number one, homozygous recessive genotype. For recessive, we use the lowercase letters. And if it's homozygous, homo means same. So we are using the same lowercase letters. So it should be 2 small a's. Heterozygous, hetero means different. So you have the 2 different a's, one big and one small. And then number 3, homozygous dominant. Dominant, we use the capital letters. Homo means same, so we use the same capital letters, big A, big A. Most of you got those right. That's good. If you did not get those right, make sure you understand why and what the right answers are. All right, moving on really quick. This is just review from the Check for Understanding quiz last week. You don't have to write this down. But the last question is the question that people had the hardest time with. So it tells you, use the chart, predict the genotype and the phenotype. So it's pretty much exactly what we just did, but using bees. So if I ask you, what is the homozygous recessive eye color? In the first box, you were supposed to put the letters, put the genotype, and just the letters, no commas, no parentheses, just small b, small b. And then the second box, you were supposed to give me the phenotype, or the actual trait. So if a person has homozygous recessive eye color, their eye color is going to be blue. So you could write blue or blue eyes, either one it should have accepted. Okay? If you think you did it correctly, email me. Ask me to hand grade it. Some people just kind of switch the boxes and put the phenotype on the top and the genotype at the bottom. Either way, if you think you did it right, ask me to check it. I will. And I'll either give you the points or I'll give you a chance to redo it. If you want to retake it, you didn't do well and you want a different score, write out your test corrections. Write them out on a piece of paper, the ones you got wrong, correct them, and then email me a picture of your handwritten test corrections, and I can give you another chance. But make sure you do well on last week's quiz because some of those same questions will be on this week's exam. Do you get it now, Naved? Do you understand how you were supposed to do it? Okay. So write out test corrections and email them to me if you want to retake it. All right. moving on to the notes. Essential question, same essential question we've had for the last few chapters. How are traits passed through the generations? We started with mitosis and meiosis in the last chapter. This chapter, we're talking more specifically about genetics and traits and the probability of inheriting things from your parents or even passing them down to your children. So key concept, the inheritance of traits follows the rules of probability. That was that flipping a coin question. If you flip a coin, what is the probability you will get heads? Either 1 out of 2, because heads is one side out of the 2 that a coin has, or 50% probability. You can turn it into a percentage. Punnett squares. These are a model used to show the possible ways genes can combine during fertilization. Fertilization is when the egg and the sperm combine to form a baby. So in other words, they help you keep track of traits. We got hundreds and hundreds of traits from our parents. We have hundreds to pass on to our offspring, but we can calculate the probability, one trait at a time, of passing those traits on. And Punnett squares help us do this. The crossing of genes. If you want to know the type of offspring a cross between two parents would produce or would potentially produce, this is when we use a Punnett square. So we take genotypes from two different parents. For our example, we're going to use T's and we're going to talk about height. So tall is dominant to short. And what genotype is this? Both parents have one big T and one small t. What do we call that genotype? Homozygous, heterozygous, dominant recessive, what do we call it? Heterozygous. Good, Jacob. Yep. And then what are these two parents going to look like? Are they going to be tall or are they going to be short? If tall is dominant to short, what do you guys think? Tall. Good, Jacob. Yep. So you have two tall parents with heterozygous genotypes. We're going to cross their genes and see what their potential offspring could be. All right, to set up a Punnett square, the letters representing the alleles from parent 1 are placed along the top. It does not matter who parent 1 is, mom or dad, just parent number 1. The letters representing the alleles from parent 2 are placed along the side, and we usually use the left side. So this is how your Punnett square should look. So we take two heterozygous parents, parent 1 on top, parent 2 on the side. You only need one drawing of this. You don't need all three, as long as it's set up this way. I color-coded the letters. You don't have to. Sometimes it's easier to keep track of. And then you fill in the squares. So squares are filled by bringing the top letters down and the side letters across. And like I said, I use different colors to keep track of the alleles. You can or you don't have to. The top GIF is an example. They're using B's instead of T's. At the beginning of it just shows you. We have this T comes down here and also down here. And then this T goes across to both of these squares. Same with this T. This T comes down to each one. And then this T comes across to each box. So like I said, we have parent 1 on top, we have parent 2 on the side, and then each box of possible offspring has one allele from each parent. They can, typically you write the pairs as the capital one first. I know the one on the top has the lowercase letter first. As long as you know in the end that dominant will mask the small one. But generally when you write it down, the capital letter goes first. Yeah, Jacob, typically you write it big B, small b. I don't know why they did that in the example, but. All right, and inside the square. So drawing the Punnett square is only half the battle. Now you'd have to know how to interpret what you see. So you have mom and dad outside on the top and on the side, and then you have 4 options in the middle. So the letters inside the squares represent the genotypes of the offspring that the parents could produce. The parents don't typically produce 4 offspring at a time. They produce 1 offspring with the chances of having one of these 4 genotypes. And all we did here is we took the 4 squares in the middle and we listed them out. Those are the potential genotypes for the 1 offspring that parents usually have. And now we have to interpret the results. There's 2 ways to look at the results. We can look at the genotype or we can look at the phenotype. So that's the list of letters that we just saw from inside the Punnett square. And here I have another poll for you to determine genotype probabilities. So the kind of questions you're going to see on your test are going to be something like this. So now that you have all the genotypes listed in front of you, what is the probability the child will have a homozygous dominant genotype? You only have 4 options. This is where the quarters come in. You told me if I had 2 quarters out of $1, you would have 50 cents. So what's the probability the child will have a heterozygous genotype? How many out of the 4 options are heterozygous? And then what's the probability the child will have a homozygous recessive genotype? So this is why we practice the genotypes first. You have to know what homozygous recessive means before you calculate the probability. Give you guys about 15 more seconds. All right, number one we had a hard time with. So first of all, in the chat, tell me what letter combination is homozygous dominant? What do the T's look like if the child is homozygous dominant? Big T, big T, good. How many boxes have a big T, big T? 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4, if I give you, 1 out of 4. If you have 1/4, that's 25%. So number one, a lot of you got that one wrong. And then number two, what is the probability the child will have a heterozygous genotype? Oops. Most of you got that one right. Good, 50. That's these two. 2 out of 4, 50%. And then number 3, most of you got that one right. Homozygous recessive, again, 1 out of 4 options, 25%. Good. All right, you could also look at it in terms of phenotype probability. And you have right there, what is the probability that the child's phenotype will be tall? The homozygous dominant and the heterozygous will turn out tall. And then what is the probability the child's phenotype will be short? So you're looking at these right now. It's not a trick question. How many talls do you see out of how many options? Give you guys about 20 more seconds. Most of you are getting this. But this is the kind of stuff you're going to see on your exam this week. Good. So 75%, 3 out of 4 chances to be tall, and then 25%, 1 out of 4 chances to be short. So 2 tall parents got together, and they have a 25% chance of having a short child. And then that's the answer for this one too. Probability is the likelihood that something will happen. We use ratios or percentages. You guys just did it in the poll. 3 out of 4 would be tall. That's 75%. 1 out of 4 would be short. That is your 25%. 1 out of 4 chances to be short or to have a short child.